Monday in Asia, and stock markets are opening right now, and we are watching carefully to see how they react to this escalating trade war between the U.S. and China. They could be an early indicator of what to expect when the opening bell rings on Wall Street here tomorrow. Now, the president believes that the U.S. economy is strong enough to withstand a temporary hit from all of this, and he's counting on Beijing coming back to the negotiating table, ready to make major concessions. But a major question was going to be whether everyday Americans are willing to ride this out. A lot of what you buy, everything from food to juice to clothes to toilet paper, is about to become a fair bit more expensive. It's expected to cost the average American family around $800 a year. That's a family of four, and it really could threaten some 2.5 million jobs, and that's according to the U.S. Chamber of Commerce. So to discuss all of this with me is Jamie Metzl. He's a senior fellow with the Atlantic Council. He's also the former executive vice president of the Asia Society, and prior to that worked with the Clinton administration. Jamie, thanks so much for being with me this evening.
Thank you, Alex.
So it seems like both sides, both China and the U.S., figured that they were negotiating from these positions of strength. It seems like they both have walked away and are waiting to see who blinks first. Who do you think has the upper hand here?
Well, right now, the United States is in a strong position because people just assume that Donald Trump is going to do an unpredictable thing. Right. And he's got his back to the wall in a way. But the Chinese have to say, we don't know what he's going to do. And that creates some strength. And China is certainly dependent on its exports to the United States. The China growth story is dependent on U.S. technology. And China has, in many ways, taken advantage of the free trade system for a lot of years. And I'm not a fan of Donald Trump in a lot of areas, but the U.S. has a moment of leverage. And if the United States can push, the hope is that we can get a fair trade system that works for everybody.
The president's also saying that if companies want to avoid tariffs, these tariffs that he's just raised, that they should just start buying American. Is it that easy?
Easier said than done.
Right.
I mean, we have a lot of Chinese components that go into everything from cars to aircraft to whatever. And so if you're making something and you have a part and that part can only be manufactured in China, what are you going to do? This is going to cause absolute chaos. So this is, in a way, it's a form of chemotherapy that the United States is going to have to absorb a lot of harm. And then the question is, whose political system will allow for a sustained trade war? China certainly has a top-down system that will allow them to take some hits. In the United States, when the pain of this trade war starts to hit home, we'll see what happens politically.
And politically, one of the ironies is that it's going to hit here in America in places that have been traditionally supportive of the president. So we'll see if that's maintained.
Well, China is focusing particularly on causing harm to those populations as a way of exerting political pressure on the United States.
Right. Let's turn to elsewhere in Asia, to North Korea. Now, after these two historic summits, it does seem like these communications between the two sides have broken down. We just saw last week, for the first time in 2 years, short-range missile tests. Let's take a quick listen to what the president had to say about this.
Nobody's happy about it, but we're taking a good look, and we'll see. We'll see. The relationship continues, but we'll see what happens. I know they want to negotiate. They're talking about negotiating, but I don't think they're ready to negotiate.
Jamie, the president famously said that he and Kim Jong-un had fallen in love after that first summit. So how did we get from that to now, where it seems at best we're at a standstill, if not totally collapsed negotiations?
Yeah, well, Alex, you said that they were historic summits. They were, in many ways, weren't historic summits. These summits,
in that they took place.
In that they took place, but it was a sham. The North Koreans never said they were going to give up their nuclear weapons. From a North Korean perspective, they were getting something for nothing. Donald Trump gave them everything in exchange for really no concessions.
Everything being a meeting with an American president.
Yeah, a meeting with an American president. We suspended the military exercises and basically reduced the leverage of the sanctions. Now these sanctions are extremely leaky. And so North Korea has legitimacy, and they were just assuming that Donald Trump was going to give them everything. And so now North Korea is saying, hey, you better pay attention to us. But the question is North Korea going to give up its nuclear weapons? And from every indication, including from all of the president's intelligence advisors, the answer to that is no.
But the White House would say that those sanctions are still very much in place. You're saying that they're leaky? They're not being as effective?
Absolutely leaky. I mean, China is certainly trading more with North Korea, but on top of that, the United States is now entering in this trade war with China just when the U.S. needs China to put pressure on North Korea. Certainly, the U.S. is in a much weaker position than it was. And the question is, has that been traded for something positive? And the answer to that is no.
All right. Jamie Metzl, thanks so much for joining me tonight. And we should note that you have just gotten back from your book tour. You have a book that just came out. It is called Hacking Darwin, Genetic Engineering and the Future of Humanity. Thanks very much.
Thanks.